going to start reading you a story. It is called Dogs Don't Tell Jokes. And it is written by Louis Sachar. And we're going to continue this in class. So, chapter 1. The story begins with a smile. It was a stupid-looking smile on a rather stupid-looking face. Maybe it was the smile that made the face look stupid. Or maybe it was the face itself. It was difficult to tell because the two were rarely apart. It was the smile on the face of Gary Boone. He was a 7th grade at Floyd Hicks Junior High School. Just about everybody there thought he was a goon. They called him Goon right to his smiling face. "You're an idiot, Goon, you know that?" Paul Wattenberg said to him one morning. "No, as a matter of fact, I didn't," Goon said. Then he laughed. He called himself Goon too. On the first day of school, his math teacher, Ms. Langley, asked him his name, and he said, "Goon." "Beg your pardon?" said Ms. Langley. "See, my name's Gary Boone, and you take the G from Gary and the oon from Boone, and you put it together, and you get Goon." Miss Langley went on to something else. Last year, at the end of year 6, Gary was voted class clown. He took it as a great compliment. He wanted to be a stand-up comic when he grew up, or a sit-down comic. He would sometimes say, "If my legs get tired," unfortunately, however, nobody who voted for him meant it as a compliment. They never laughed at his jokes. He was simply the obvious choice. Gary often daydreamed about being on a late-night talk show, sitting next to a beautiful starlet and other celebrities, cracking jokes naturally. All the starlets would fall in love with him because he was so funny. Sometimes Miss Langley would be up on stage with him. "You were his 7th grade teacher, weren't you?" asked David Letterman. "That's right," says Miss Langley. "But even then I knew he'd grow up to be a famous comedian. Of course, as a teacher, I never would let myself laugh at his jokes. I bit the insides of my cheeks raw from laughing. He was so funny. I only wished I was 15 years younger." Miss Langley happened to be one of the most beautiful teachers ever to teach 7th grade math. At night, when Gary dreamed about her, he called her Ms. Longlegs. He dreamed about her surprisingly often, at least once a week. "Hey, Goon," said Matt Hughes, "has anybody ever told you you are an idiot?" "Yes, thank you," said Gary. "Paul mentioned it this morning." Chapter 2. Gary wrote a story called "The Boy Who Ate Fire" for English class. Mrs. Carlyle was his English teacher. Someone in the class had asked how many pages the story had to be. "Whatever's appropriate," Miss Carlyle had answered. That was her big mistake. The Boy Who Ate Fire by Gary W. Boone. Once upon a time, there was a boy who ate fire. He died. Mrs. Carlyle refused to accept the story. It's not a story, she said. It's only one sentence. Two, corrected Gary. She told him that he had to rewrite the story and that it had to be at least 5 pages. She said it was a good title, but it doesn't tell what happens. But that's what happens when you eat fire, said Gary. You die. It was supposed to be a joke. Mrs. Carlyle didn't laugh. Someday, Gary thought his story would be published. It would be a big, thick book and cost $19.95. The Boy Who Ate Fire by Gary W. Boone. Then you'd open it up and it would just have 2 sentences, followed by 300 blank pages. It would be hilarious. Millions of people would buy it and put it on their coffee tables. He'd be rich. After English, Gary headed to math class. He'd been in junior high for almost a month, but he still found it muddling to have to change classrooms every period. At night, he sometimes dreamed he couldn't remember his schedule. He also dreamed they changed his schedule without telling him. They changed his locker combination in his dreams too. Once he dreamed that for some odd reason, he had taken off his clothes in the hallway and locked them in his locker because he thought it was his gym locker. Although that didn't exactly make sense either. He quickly realized his mistake, standing here in the hallway in his underwear. As Ms. Longlegs, wearing cowboy boots and holding an umbrella over her head, walked toward him. But he couldn't get his locker open. In fact, he couldn't remember which locker was his. Oh dear. In real life, however, he had no problem with his locker or in finding his way from class to class. But having to rush around changing classes all the time, he felt like he was missing something. Like there was something happening that everybody in the school knew about except him. And there was nobody he could ask. And even if there was somebody to ask, he didn't know the question. Gary, why didn't you do the homework? Miss Langley asked him after class. He was standing by her desk wondering if she owned a pair of cowboy boots. I didn't know about it, he said. You didn't know about it. How could you not know about it? He shrugged. There are a lot of things I don't know about. In fact, there are probably more things I don't know about than I do know about, he laughed. Miss Langley stared at him. It was on the board, she said slowly and distinctly, like she was talking to an idiot. Where? Where it always is, said Miss Langley. In the box in the upper right-hand corner. Gary looked at the blackboard. There was a section blocked off which contained the day's homework assignment. I've put the homework there every day since the first day of school, said Miss Langley. Don't tell me you didn't know that. He didn't tell her. Miss Langley stared at him in disbelief. Have your eyes ever been checked? She asked. No, said Gary. They've always been brown. In one of his more bizarre daydreams, Gary imagined himself as some kind of superhero who caught criminals by telling them jokes. The crooks would laugh so hard they'd fall down. Supergoon catches bank robbers, the headline proclaims. The newspaper has a picture of two masked men laughing hysterically on the sidewalk while Gary is standing over them, telling one joke after another. Gary Supergoon Boone broke up a bank robbery at First National Bank this afternoon. Two armed robbers were fleeing from the scene when Goon shouted out a joke, causing the men to fall over in uncontrollable fits of laughter. Goon bravely continued to crack jokes despite the guns pointed at his heart until the police arrived. I knew they wouldn't shoot, Goon said, because then they would miss the punchline. For the safety of our readers, we cannot reprint any of Goon's jokes. They are so funny, they are dangerous. Besides, Goon might need to use them again to catch other dangerous criminals. Gary never cried. He laughed. The more it hurts, the more he laughed. Like the time he accidentally bumped into Philip Corbin, making him drop his ice cream bar in the dirt. Sorry, Gary said, with a really silly grin plastered across his face. You think it's funny, Goon? Asked Philip. No, said Gary. Philip pushed him. I said I was sorry. Philip pushed him again, and he fell down. He smiled at the crowd that had gathered around. Pick it up, said Philip. Gary picked up the ice cream bar. The vanilla ice cream was covered with dirt on all sides. Looks good. Eat it. Gary laughed. What a goon, said someone. Eat it, said Philip. Gary licked at the dirty ice cream. Yum, chocolate chips, he said. All of it, said Philip. Gary brought it back to his mouth. Philip grabbed Gary's hair with one hand and his elbow with the other, and he shoved the ice cream in his face. Oh dear. The stick hit his lip, and Gary continued to laugh as the ice cream dripped down his face. And that is where we're going to leave our story. Thank you very much.